I think within a minute I pass out. And when I wake up, I'm like in the middle of the median on this highway, and all of my weight is like thrust onto the gas pedal. And I'm looking, it's like 100 something miles I'm going so fast. And I don't know why I did this, because this is the number one thing you don't do when you're going really fast is press the brake. But I spin out of the median, get on the highway, I press the brake, and then I start flipping.
Brittany King, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Of course. You wrote an electric article on Kid Cudi for Spin Magazine. That was great.
Welcome world. I'm kidding.
Yes. No, seriously. Before we get into it, I just wanted to say the last line of that article where it said that Kid Cudi did not get back for comment. I was thinking how hilarious it would have been if his comment, he just sent you an audio file of him humming, and he's like, "This is my comment to the article." He's just like,
like editorial note. He hummed. Like that's amazing.
Yes, that would have been perfect. But in your article, it's titled "The Kids Cudi Saved," and for Spin Magazine, you wrote, quote, "Cudi revealed it's his job to be the navigator, to convince the listener not to check out." And as a huge fan of Cudi myself, I wanted to ask you, what is it about Kid Cudi's navigation or Kid Cudi's artistry that drew you to him and made you want to write this piece?
Well, since 2009, I don't know if that was the official debut of Cudi, but that's when I became a fan of his, when I was like 20, 21 maybe. And when I bought the Man on the Moon album, it sounds so cliche, but that was such an album that spoke to me so much. This was during a time where I was going through a lot, like, and I'm not bashful about talking about this. I talk about it on my channel and other articles, but I had an addiction to alcohol. And this was actually at the start of it. And hearing Cudi just be vulnerable and Man on the Moon 1, 2, and all of these other albums, I was like, he's not saying that he's perfect. He's not saying he has it together. He's just saying, hey, I feel the way you feel, or I felt the way you felt. Don't check out. Don't give up. And just that sincerity really drew me to him. Besides him being an awesome rapper, and I love his music, but that is something that I felt. Besides Michael Jackson, I was like, okay, Kid Cudi is someone that I feel is so authentic in himself.
Yeah, I felt the same way with the authenticity. And I believe it was back in 2009 with Man on the Moon. And I had been a fan of rap, a fan of hip hop before that. And when Man on the Moon dropped, even though it was listed in iTunes at the time in the hip hop rap category, I truly felt like millions of other people that it was its own genre, and I was hearing something that I'd never heard before. And it was so crazy that in my high school, no one was really slinging CDs. I mean, a couple people would burn CDs and have either their own music or sell them for $5 for another artist. But there were, I want to say, at least 10 or 20 people I ran across just in my grade, and it's not a huge high school, that burned Man on the Moon CDs to bring them in the week the album dropped, to bump it over the speakers or just bump it before class, like hook it up to the receiver, like the old DVD style shit that was still in classrooms back then, just so they could listen to the music.
I actually I bought the CDs, but I would burn them and would take them with me in my purse everywhere, just in case, because it wasn't the aux, cord. It was literally CD players in people's cars, and I would just pop in Cudi all the time. So yeah, I was one of those kids that burned Kid Cudi, and that was an awesome time. I miss those times. Those CDs. Yeah,
there's something about the music being a little hard to listen to that made it more satisfying in a way. Like now you could shuffle on Spotify and listen to anything you want. But I remember making 6 CDs for my car, and then when I wanted to switch it out, I had to burn another CD and stick it in, or buy another CD and stick it in. And like that whole process of, getting viruses from LimeWire on your computer and then like clicking through 65 pop-ups to download a song.
Exactly.
And then finally listening to it. Yeah, exactly. Like you needed real dedication to listen to music back in the day. You had to either go somewhere on the internet or go somewhere to a brick and mortar store. And now it's just with you all the time.
Exactly. And just thinking about that, like, yeah, it's different. Like having your like CD case in your car and it's the music that you want to listen to versus just everything is on here. So it's kind of like, yeah, I'll just listen to that. Yeah. There's something nostalgic about that, but I get it.
Yeah. And I feel like it also affected the way that I listened to music back then as opposed to now, because I'm so quick to shuffle the song now, where if it's 10, maybe 30 seconds and I don't like it, I'm just like, skip, next. But when you put in so much effort to getting something, even if I don't like the song, I would still be way more inclined to listen to it back then, because I'm like, I just paid $13 for this shit on iTunes. Like I just spent half of my aunt's gift card from Easter, so I gotta listen to this full album. Back from a technical difficulty, but we figured it out. We're rolling.
No need to worry, people.
Yes, no need to worry. So we were talking about Kid Cudi and musical taste back in high school, like 2009 era, and the last thing I said before we cut off was just like the effort that we had to put into download music back then, I feel like made me appreciate music a little bit more, because of having to, you know, if you spent half your aunt's Apple iTunes gift card that she gave to you on your birthday on an entire album, you're gonna put in the work to listen to that album. Whereas now everything's in your pocket, so you're basically just streaming and skipping things every 10 seconds. You're basically like a music god with the iPhone in your pocket.
Exactly. And it really showcased who you really, really like, because it took a long time to download. It took a long time to wait for the burned CD. And then actually, if someone was to ask you like your favorite artist, they can go through your Spotify, yeah, but like going through your CD case in your car is a totally different ballgame. So yeah, I think that was when music was really thriving. The kids now don't understand, but
no, yeah, we're like the old ones just shitting on the youngins. You know, they don't understand what we had to go through to listen to a song. We had to walk up 8 miles. We had to walk up 8 miles of hills in the snow to stream songs back in the day.
Exactly, to go to the CD store or to go to Blockbuster and get a movie. Like, they don't know. Well, that was good times. You mentioned
back in that time you were struggling with addiction, and it made me think of the podcast that Kid Cudi did with Joe Rogan a few years ago. I don't know if you tuned into that.
He was on Joe Rogan?
Kid Cudi was on Joe Rogan, yeah.
Wow, how did I miss that one? Or maybe it's just like I'm missing my mind. But so how was that? I'm sure that was an experience, pun intended.
So, it was one of my favorite Rogan podcasts, maybe podcasts in general of all time, and I regularly revisit that episode and the Jamie Foxx episode. But in the one with Kid Cudi, he was talking about the nuances of his addictions and how back in that time when Man on the Moon popped, he was drinking a lot. He was doing coke like every morning. He was going into detail of his drug routine and saying, you know, I would do a line in the morning, and then I would drink a beer because I wouldn't want to be too on edge, and then I would smoke some weed so people wouldn't know that I was on blow, and like I didn't want to give off this like sketchy vibe. And he went into a lot of the negatives of his drug use and how he felt like he was trapped by it. But he was also saying that at that time he was so anxious that doing those drugs allowed him to enter a headspace where he was able to meet fans on the street. And that was the first time for me that I had ever heard someone talk about the nuances of addiction, that yes, it can destroy your life in the long term, but in those moments when things are going well, there is some positive reason, like some way that the drug makes you feel that is bringing something to your life that keeps making you claw back to it. And it was just interesting to hear him talk about some of the things that some of the places the people aren't willing to go. Like this drug, yes, I quit it and it was destroying my life, but also it was actually doing some things that I enjoyed.
Exactly. And that's the whole part of the cycle of addiction is like, it is nuanced. Like all of it isn't bad. I mean, the whole of it is bad, but in your mind, you're feeling like this makes complete sense why I'm using this thing for this. So I completely understand what he was saying. I need to check that out. I cannot believe I have not seen that.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it really was like a drug education for me, and I've listened to a lot of people since then talk about different sorts of drug use with harder drugs, whether it's like coke or MDMA, mushrooms, or just smoking some weed, having a drink, and it made me realize how much drug education sucked in school. It was just like there was no education about anything that drugs did to you in school. It was just across the board. Drugs are terrible for you. Every drug to every intensity to every amount, no matter your genetics or personality or upbringing. And now sign this banner that says you'll never pick up a beer for the rest of your life when you're like 13 years old.
Exactly. Wear this Dare shirt.
Hearing,
which I like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Wear this Dare shirt while you're blowing lines in the bathroom. But I that would be hilarious if you walk into a New York City bathroom, someone just doing drugs, but like in a Dare hoodie.
They're like, you don't do drugs. I do, but you don't, kids.
Yeah, exactly. I dare to do drugs. But yeah, when Kid Cudi or other people are willing to shed light on the things that drugs allow them to do, to me, that's the type of information that I want when I'm a teenager. I want all the bad shit, but I also want the good shit. I want the full picture of what those things are capable of doing to me and will do to me when I eventually try them, like drinking, smoking weed. Everyone's going to eventually, pretty much try one of those things. But then when you have just across the board, this shit sucks. There's such an anxiety built into your head as a teenager where you're like, oh my God, like, am I a fucking terrible person because I'm smoking weed in this dorm room right now? Or like, because I had a beer on a Tuesday afternoon, I'm everything my teachers or my parents said I would be just because I'm using these drugs at all.
Exactly. And that's what I loved about him and love about him is like how he was just realistic about it. Like you can be listening to a song of him kind of going even back and forth with his drug use or his alcohol use. And you're just like, I do that too. But at the whole of it, he's saying it might be fun now and we might go out and, chill with our friends and do this and do that. But at the end of the day, it's probably not the best thing. But he didn't come at it with like being judgmental or coming at it with like a haughty attitude. Like, I'm the prime example of how to be fixed. He was like, I'm not, but I would like to be. And hopefully my music helps you. So, yeah. But also Kid Cudi. I mean,
was there
very,
a rock bottom?
Very short. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask you if there was a rock bottom moment or period where you knew you had to kick alcohol, because you mentioned that you were dealing with addiction with alcohol.
Let me get my list and I'll be back. No, probably the worst was when I was 22, and I remember I was going to the city for like this music festival with my friends, and as I was going down there, like I was getting close to the festival, like I was already pretty drunk, which is also a sign of just horrible behavior of driving drunk. But I was drunk for that whole weekend, and there were some things that happened there that I was like, okay, I want to leave. Like, I don't want to be here. It's like 4 a.m. and I'm over here drunk talking about I want to drive 4 hours back to my home. And I do. My friends tell me not to, and I get on the highway anyway. But the thing is, when I get on the highway, I take an exit. Like, that brings me right back to where I kind of was. And I'm like, that was probably a clear sign not to get on the highway. But me back then, I was like, oh, let me just go back and try this again. So I go, and I think within a minute I pass out. And when I wake up, I'm like in the middle of the median on this highway, and all of my weight is like thrust onto the gas pedal. And I'm looking, it's like 100 something miles I'm going so fast. And I don't know why I did this, because this is the number one thing you don't do when you're going really fast is press the brake. But I spin out of the median, get on the highway, I press the brake, and then I start flipping like 4 or 5 times. My car gone. Like, I don't even know how I'm still alive. I still think about that. Like, how am I alive? Actually, I do know, because I believe in the Lord, and I know that's why. But I crashed my car, ended up in like this ditch. Police came, everything. That was a wake up call. That was the first time where I knew I wasn't invincible. That's when I'm like, I can die. I can die. And I was only sober at that time for probably a week and a half. And I started drinking again. It got worse. And that's when I kind of was like, I'm actually okay with dying, to be real. I was like, I'm going to die. If this didn't wake me up, there's nothing that's going to. But the one thing that actually did, and I know it's not Sunday right now, but I'm about to like do a little Martin Luther King sermon. Just brief.
Go ahead.
One of my best friends, it was a Saturday. So it was this time where I'm like about to turn 25. It's like February 2014. And on a Saturday, I was in a club or a bar or whatever. I went to the bathroom, was just crying. I was like on the ground, bawling, crying, because I'm like, I felt just like I was dying. Like, I'm like, I don't want to die like this. Like, I feel like I have so much more potential, And my friend comes to the bathroom and was like, and she started crying. She's like, okay, tomorrow we're going to go to church no matter what, no matter if we're hungover, drunk, whatever, we're going to church. And I'm like, okay. But the next day I was throwing up. I was still drunk. I was hungover. I'm like, I'm not going. And she's like, no, you're going. So she came to my house, made me go. And I hadn't been to church in forever. But when I walked in, I just couldn't hold back I was crying. One, I was crying because I just felt like horrible with what my life had become at that point. But also I was crying because I was thankful that I felt horrible, because I was in a place where I wasn't feeling anything. I was so numb to stuff. And the fact that I was feeling guilty and I knew I needed to change, I was kind of thankful for that. But long story short, basically the sermon that the preacher preached was exactly what I needed to hear. And I made up in my mind that day that I was not going to drink anymore. And I just told God, I was like, yo, listen, I don't want to drink, but you got to help me with this withdrawal. Because if I have horrible withdrawals, I don't know if I can, be sober. And yeah, I never had withdrawals. I prayed and I did not have a withdrawal. And 8 years later, February 16th, 2014 was the last time I drank. So that's 8 years later.
Wow.
And I'm sober. So you're welcome.
Amazing.
That's my TED Talk.
Yeah, there you go. We're going to clip that, send it to Ted.
Yeah. They're going to be like,
but no, that accident that is wild. Like, even if you take away the drunk aspect of the driving, like just being in an accident like that where you lose attention for a split second, or you're texting on your phone or something, and then you end up flipping over in the middle of the road, that I've never been in any sort of accident like that, knock on wood, but I would imagine I would reevaluate my life, whatever I was doing. Like, the worst shit in my life after an accident like that would flash in front of my eyes. Even if I was sober, I would just be like, what the fuck happened? Like, this is a signal that something is going on, especially if I didn't cause, especially if I caused it. Like, if something I was doing in the car, I'd be like, I need to figure out some shit. Like, there's something going on that led to this.
For sure. I mean, yeah, I was like, you are a messed up human. Fix it. And when I saw the car when I got out, because I was like, how I crashed, I don't even know how it flipped where the tires were on the ground, but I couldn't get out of either door. I had to crawl out the back door of the back window that was shattered. When I saw the car, fell to the ground crying because I didn't understand how I was alive. But that just spoke to how the addiction was so bad that I really was like, you have to change. And I really thought I was changing. But then I thought after a week and a half or two, I was like, I can have one drink. I can have one. I've done, and then no. It was like, psych.
Yeah.
You can't have any.
Then one leads to 8. I know how it goes.
Yeah.
So you were able to quit cold turkey after that trip to church. You said you didn't get any withdrawals, really. Did the cravings go away after that, or was it just straight up a switch flipped, and then since then you've been sober?
No. Once I really made up my mind, and it wasn't like an emotional, like, oh, I'm good. It was a logical, like, do I want to die? No. Okay, I have to stop. That's it. And with that, I was like, I have to change my environment. I cannot keep hanging out with the same people. I thought I could, and I couldn't. I had to cut out like at least 99% of my friends. And they would, text or message or call like, hey, this party's going on, this, and I'd be like, I'm not going out. I would explain to some that I was closer to, or others I would ignore, or others I would just say, no, I'm not coming. And after, a month or two, people would still be like, hey, are you still in town? Like, I'm like, yeah, I'm still here. I completely isolated myself from socializing. And every day I literally would get up, I would pray, I would read the Bible, and I would live my life. And then before I went to bed, I would pray, read my Bible. And then I read the Bible within 8 months because I was dead serious about my life. So I didn't have cravings, and it was probably more so because I asked for them to not be there. But it was work too. It was me not being like, okay, God, don't give me cravings. I'm going to hang out exactly the same way I've been. It was like, please help me with that. And also I'm changing everything 180, and I did. I don't think it would be the same story if I kept doing the same thing. So the cravings weren't there. I had a different craving of bettering my life. And even till this day, I don't ever crave alcohol. Like, I can go out with my friends to the bar or whatever. I don't even feel at all any temptation, because it's like once someone brought you out of a dark hole that you are alone in, and it's 1,000 feet down and you're in it alone. It's the scariest thing. And someone pulls you out. Why would you ever jump in? Ever. So when I think of alcohol, that's what I see. And so I don't have any cravings. But it's not like that for everyone. And it's not like that for everyone. But sobriety is also work too. It's not like it's easy. It's work.
Yeah, so the time alone and changing up your environment really helped you reevaluate and really helped you climb back to the person you were capable of being. Like that just kind of like removing yourself from some of those influences, or just being around it in the short term while you were figuring out yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that was the key. I mean, because the first time, when I had the crash, I wasn't drinking, but I was doing the exact same thing besides not drinking. And when I'm not going to blame it on friends, because you're in control of your own, self. But if someone's like, oh, you can have one, or you're thinking you can have one, and they're also like, yo, you got this. Like, you're not going to spark. You're like, okay. But because when I was by myself and I was remembering how bad things were, and I was remembering what I was promising to myself, and I was just focused on that, and building also my self-worth up. Let's just talk about dignity and integrity. Just building all of that up for myself too. It took that needed dedication of isolation. I needed that, and that saved my life. That did. So don't drink, kids. Just kidding.
Drinking and driving is a risky combo. I've had my buzz to driving. I'm gonna take the strong stance and say don't black out and drive. I've definitely had my young adult escapades buzzed driving, but fortunately those days are far behind me. But it is crazy that how much, when you're in the moment, even if you only have 4 or 5 beers, something like that, like a steady buzz, but you don't feel completely blacked out, you're gonna remember everything. You're at the perfect point where your motor function is starting to be compromised, or is already compromised, but your confidence is up. So it's just like a complete shit show for driving, because you're like, I'm the man right now. I could drive and cure cancer on my phone on the ride home,
exactly.
At the same time.
I can fly.
Yeah.
I can do all the things.
So it's a bad combo.
That's a tricky spot to be in. Yeah. It is.
So I had what you were saying, it made me think about my solo quarantine in a way, because I had a different type of reevaluation, as did many people, literally billions of people across the planet during 2020, 2021, where people were spending a lot of time alone, or at least isolated with people. And I was in my apartment by myself for most of it. And a lot of people around me were not doing well with it. We're suffering, and I recognized that, and I almost felt bad when people were talking about the anxiety of being alone, or I almost felt like there was something wrong with me at one point, because I felt like I was doing too well for the time I was spending alone. If that makes sense. I realized that I needed that alone time to figure out who I was and how I was spending my time, energy, and money and all this shit. I'm just like still being able to work remotely. And then in that downtime, literally just sitting on my couch thinking about